This is Stupid Blaine. I say Stupid Blaine because Blaine doesn't make real good decisions. Blaine is a junior in high school, and he loves to surf. He loves to surf. And so he's thinking about high school, and he's saying, you know, I don't get all this stuff. It just seems like it would make so much more sense just to drop out of school and go surf. So Stupid Blaine's goal is to live happily for the rest of his life. There are two alternatives available to Stupid Blaine. He can drop out of school, get a great job flipping hamburgers, or he can graduate from high school. I want you to notice what I'm holding here. This is a high school diploma, and this is a $1 million bill. And no, it's not real. So we're going to put that in the alternative pocket. Now the question is, why $1 million? Because the difference in lifetime earnings between dropping out of high school and graduating from college is approximately $1 million. So Stupid Blaine here is making a $1 million decision. So once again, I asked a bunch of high school kids who were still in high school, why have some of your friends dropped out of school? And so we look at the advantages and disadvantages of dropping out of school. Well, what's the obvious advantage? You don't have to mess with school anymore. You don't have teachers nagging you because you never see your teachers. Your parents might nag you, but they're really just going to give you guff about dropping out of school. They can't say, did you do your homework? Because you've dropped out of school. You get to sleep in until, 11, 12 o'clock. Life is really fairly good for a very, very short length of time until your parents get sick of it and take appropriate action, whatever that is. Now, what are the disadvantages of dropping out of school? You get bored. I mean, you've been used to all of that sociability, all of the people around you, and suddenly you're home alone with nothing to do. Now, you can look for a job, and you do, kind of, but, you're not spending your whole life looking for a job, even though your parents say you should be. So it's a little bit boring. Your parents are always yelling at you. There's a little bit of lack of self-respect, and students can give you a bunch more, both advantages and disadvantages. All right, what about the advantages of staying in school? Well, your parents aren't yelling at you. You learn a little bit of stuff. It's a tremendous amount of fun when you're out of the classroom. He wanted to join the surfing team, but he lives in Barstow. So that was a little tough. But actually, he was on the football team, and that was a lot of fun. So all of that is gone. But if you stay in school, those are the things you can do. So there are real advantages to staying in school. What are the major disadvantages? You have to either do the homework or get guff for not doing the homework. There are a lot of people at school that you don't like very much, and yet you're hanging around them all the time. Adults, you've got more than one set of adults who are on your case the whole time. So those are some of the disadvantages. So now we've looked at the advantages and disadvantages of the two alternatives. And by the way, did I tell you this is a hamburger flipper? Because that's probably the job that, if Blaine gets a job, that's probably the job he'll have. So Now we ask the students to decide. Well, they're sitting there in the classroom, right? So what do you think they're going to pick? Probably what they're going to pick is the staying in school. Although, just to bug you, they may choose dropping out of school. Probably they're going to choose staying in school. And what do they give up? Well, this isn't a great indication of what they give up, but we'll use that. They give up the hamburger flipping job. They also give up the freedom, the lack of the lack of sleeping in at 10 o'clock in the morning and all that kind of stuff. So basically, the purpose of this is to really analyze in a little bit more realistic way what dropping out of school means. And if you use something like this, my students very often ask me, is it real? I mean, if it were $1 million bill, if I was holding a $1 million bill here, would I be teaching? All right, so we've gone through benefit cost analysis for third graders, for middle school kids, and for high school kids. But I guess what I want you to realize is that you don't just have to use this in an economics class. If you're teaching history and you're trying to decide, Caesar is about to enter Rome, and the question is, should he enter Rome with his army or without his army? If you use the decision-making apron, you can figure out that this was a very serious decision for him. I mean, we always talk about Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Well, he was going to cross the Rubicon. The question was he going to bring his army or not? What are the advantages and disadvantages of bringing his army? What are the advantages and disadvantages of not bringing his army? One of the ones that students like to use a lot is Truman's decision about how to end World War II. Should he bomb Japan or should he send more troops in? But you can go through any major decision made by either an individual such as a farmer in New England in 1777 trying to decide whether he should fight for the rebels, become a Tory, or just try and stay out of the whole thing as much as he can. And if you do that, then students begin to actually look into the decisions were made and do some serious analysis. Another application of the decision-making apron is an investigation and analysis of a current social issue. Let's take the example of immigration. Many people will tell you that we need to have a comprehensive immigration program. And the economist will ask, what does that mean? Let's assume that our goal is to secure the borders so that we prevent smuggling of drugs and we prevent smuggling of guns. It's usually argued that guns are smuggled from the United States to Mexico and that drugs are smuggled from Mexico to the United States. Well, if that's the only issue, then all we have to do is put up a 50-foot fence and get some guard dogs and machine guns and barbed wire, and we can do that. It's expensive, but we can do it. But then we have to look at the impact on the prices of goods and services in the United States, recognizing that the flow of labor from Mexico into the United States tends to keep the prices of agricultural goods and many other services low. If we decide that we're going to completely close that border, then farmers are going to be looking for people to pick their crops, and the fact is that their crops will rot and have rotted in the fields. So if we're looking at the apron, it's very important, and maybe in some cases the most important step in the whole thing is this pocket right here. What is the goal? If the goal is to stop people from coming in, then we can do that. But recognize that when we look at the disadvantages, we're going to have to talk about food prices and other service prices in the U.S. So what the apron says is, contrary to the statement of a politician maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, it's just not as simple as that. And as I told you, absolutely everything that an economist does can be put on this apron. It's a very powerful tool of analysis. It's not simple. Going through these silly examples, it looks pretty simple, but it can get very complicated. Students are going to confuse the concepts of disadvantages with cost. There are a lot of ways that this can go wrong, but if you stick to the basic framework, your students will have an analytical tool that they can use not only as they're progressing through school, but for the rest of their lives. Thanks very much.